doctor.
We generally use the word stress when we feel that everything seems to become too much. We're overloaded and wonder whether we can really cope with the pressures placed on us. Anything that poses a challenge or a threat to our well-being is a stress. Now, some stresses get you going and they're good for you. I mean, without any stress at all, life would be pretty boring. Think Australia. However, when stress affects both our mental and physical health, that's bad. Now, the human body responds to stresses by activating the nervous system and specific hormones. These hormones will speed up your heart rate, your breathing rate, your blood pressure, and your metabolism. Blood vessels open wider to let more blood flow through to large muscle groups, putting your muscles on alert. Pupils dilate to improve vision. The liver releases some of its stored glucose to increase the body's energy. This stress response turns you into a lean, mean fighting machine, which is why it's also called the fight or flight response. And the idea is to help you perform well under pressure. But the stress response can also cause problems when it overreacts or fails to turn off and reset itself properly. That's what does most of the damage these days, and not just in adults. And now, how does stress manifest in children?
I think we're really looking at three categories of symptoms. The first, and often the most obvious, especially with little children, are the physical symptoms. Okay. So you are looking for things like nausea, vomiting, recurrent flus, recurrent infections, those sort of things.
That's right, because stress reduces your immune system.
It does.
Almost shuts it off.
Yes.
Okay.
The second one would be the emotional indicators. So you'll find that children are quite crying, very clingy, those sort of behaviors. You might also find that they're very irritable, agitated, don't want you to come near them, those sort of things.
And I imagine that's a change in behavior. So what was once normal is now becoming abnormal.
Yes,
okay,
absolutely. And then the third thing, which you actually just touched on now, is the behavior. So what we would see in behavior is often a regression in behavior. We might find children who were previously potty trained might start bedwetting. We might find thumb sucking. Other behaviors to look out for would be things, one that often comes up with older children, in fact, is lying.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is quite an interesting one, and not lying in terms of trying to protect yourself, more a lot of fantasy telling, storytelling.
Oh, right.
And what we find there is that that's often a way for them to control a situation where they feel they've got no control.
Wow. Okay, so now those are the signs and symptoms that parents can see in their kids. Do you look out for anything else? I mean, drawings. What else would you look out for?
We can look at drawings. Drawings are quite subjective, and we'll look at a pattern that is specifically child draws, so not just at the one drawing. But I am going to show you some things that we often notice. So what you'll see, for instance, is there'll often be a narrowing of the shoulders. If children feel that it really is, it's almost literally just too much for them, for their shoulders. Okay. So there'll be a littering of the shoulders. And for this one, quite often we'll also see that they'll shade the face. Shading happens, quite often. Also, I think just because they feel that they're less aware of what's happening around them and those sort of things.
Or don't want to show their face almost.
Or don't want to show their face, yes. Okay. And then, quite a common one again, are floating figures. All right, so if the figures aren't grounded, that's something to look out for. Again, if all the figures are floating, that might indicate something else, but specifically one figure.
Gee, if I'd see that in a kid, I'd think you want to be an astronaut, Now you're telling me he's stressed.
Well, it could be.
So what causes stress in kids?
I think what's important to remember that there can be any number of potential stresses, specifically because in young children they haven't developed the coping skills to deal with the things that we can deal with. So keep that in mind. But the three things that they've sort of more or less research has found stresses kids most, firstly would be school and schoolwork.
Okay.
And specifically marks and wondering if they're going to make it.
There you go, teachers. Huh? You stress our kids. I knew it.
Yeah. And the second one then would also be family occurrences, divorce, moving, those sort of things. Sure. And then thirdly, friends. Fighting with friends, peer pressure, those sort of things. And the effects of stress on kids? We've talked about some of the signs and symptoms. I mean, the longer standing effects. What would you say those are? Well, some of the things that we'll definitely see is a complete apathy after a while. They almost just feel like they just don't have the energy for anything. And what's very, very dangerous there is that if we leave that stress for too long, we might start to see clinical depression, which is quite a worry. So those are some of the things to look out for. And the other thing that we often see is a lack of concentration, and very often that gets confused for ADHD when in fact it is just stress.
Fascinating. What is the difference between perceived stress and actual stress?
So an actual stress would be
Trick
something...
question.
It is a trick question.
There is no difference, whether if a child perceives it as stressful, it is in fact stressful, it's stressful for a child.
It's the same thing. That's exactly it. With adults, though, I mean, a perceived stress is something that just makes you feel nervous, whereas a real stress is something that literally endangers your life.
That's right. You should feel nervous about it.
That's it. Kids don't know the difference.
What about in South Africa? Do we have some unique stresses for our children?
I think we do. I think we've got some unique opportunities as well to get rid of that stress. But I think we need to be quite careful about what they're exposed to.
In what ways?
I think we live in a country where violent crime does happen more often. It's on the news quite often. We often know somebody close to us who has experienced something like that. So it's important also to monitor especially what they watch as well. Make sure they're not exposed to it too often.
Okay. Well, the big question I really want to ask is how do we help kids reduce their stress levels?
There are quite a few things we can do. Like the most obvious will be for us to just completely remove the stressor.
Okay.
That's often the easiest thing to do. But it's not always possible. And secondly, we have to think about, is that really something we want to do? Because if you always remove the stressor, the kids are never going to get those coping skills. So what we want to do is we want to teach them some stress management skills.
Okay.
Things like just getting the stress out. I'll often give them balloons to jump on and squash and just something physical. Yeah.
I'm not feeling a bit stressed at the moment, so you think the big answer would be to just jump on this balloon or pop this balloon?
You can try.
Oh, that felt good. You're right. I feel so much better.
It does actually help.
I feel like playing with Play-Doh, actually. I suppose that's another way of kind of getting tangibly rid of stress.
It is. And it really is like a stress ball. I mean, just being able to squash it does also help. And then what a really nice idea is that you can actually add some aromatherapy oils to those.
Okay.
Because the relaxation that comes with that.
Right. Anel, that's been fascinating. Thank you. Particularly the balloon popping thing. I mean, you may not be able to prevent your kids from feeling frustrated, sad, or angry, but you can provide the tools they need to cope with these emotions. Here are 5 keys that Anel and I have come up with to help your kids beat stress. Notice out loud. Tell your kids when you notice something they might be feeling. It seems like you might still feel mad about what happened at the playground, for example. Listen to your kids. Ask them to tell you what's wrong. Listen attentively and avoid any urge to judge, blame, or lecture. Parents, encourage your child to tell the story by asking questions. Put a label on it. Many kids don't yet have words for their feelings. If your child seems angry or frustrated, use those feeling words to help your child learn to identify the emotions by name. Kids who can recognize and identify emotions are less likely to reach the behavioral boiling point. Be patient, parents. It hurts to see your kids unhappy or worried, but try to resist the urge to fix every problem, as Anel said. Instead, help them grow into good problem solvers. You won't be there to solve each problem as your child goes through life, so by learning healthy coping strategies, kids can manage their own stresses in the future. And finally, just be there. Sometimes kids don't feel like talking about what's bothering them. Doesn't mean they don't want their parents to leave them alone. You can help them feel better just by being there. Isn't it nice to know that your presence really counts?
I want to live the best life.